guests, then get off the stage so you can listen to their conversation. First, David Horowitz is the author of several books and the founder of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. He's here today to discuss his new book, Big Agenda, and he's going to be doing a book signing of copies downstairs in the lobby after the event, so please join him down there. And moderating tonight's event, tonight's discussion is Rich Zeoli, weekday host of The Rich Zeoli Show, which airs from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Please join me in welcoming Rich Zeoli and David Horowitz.
Thanks. All right. Good evening. I'm Rich. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming out tonight. This is David. We appreciate you coming tonight. I know everyone's busy, but this is an important book, an important time, and a big agenda. So I appreciate you. How many of you listened to Talk Radio 1210 WPHT? Great. Thank you. And for the rest of you, what's your excuse? 3 to 6 every day, really. It's a great conversation. And a lot about, David was asking me what we talk about. He was on my show a couple weeks ago. A lot about politics, obviously, and current events. And that's why we're here tonight. It's a privilege to be here with David Horowitz. And David, I want to ask you first and foremost, it's a little bit over 100 days. And this president has been under constant assault, it seems to me, from the media, from many on the left. Understatement? What happened to the concept of a honeymoon period?
Well, honeymoon is really honeymoon for an incoming president is really a sacred political right in our country. And since we're here in Philadelphia, you should remember how the country began. We have a national motto. It's an official motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And this encapsulates the way we were founded. We were, unlike every other country every other nation state in the world, we weren't founded by people of a common origin, common ethnicity, common language. We were actually founded by people from diverse countries, diverse ethnicities, and diverse sectarian views. So a lot of religious refugees who have been persecuted by orthodoxy. And so the idea on which this country is based is the idea that although we are always going to be divided, we are still united as Americans. We have, and our rights as American, identities as American are in the documents that you find in this neck of the woods. So the political honeymoon is very important because campaigns are by nature divisive. A lot of harsh things are bound to be said. People are grasping for power on both sides. And we have had in this country the tradition of a presidential honeymoon, where the president gets to occupy the Oval Office, gets inaugurated, gets to occupy the Oval Office, gets to have his team put in place and confirmed by the Senate, and gets to enact, to do various acts to lay out his agendas and implement them before normal political conflicts resume. And the Gallup organization has estimated that the average time for recently of the honeymoon for an incoming president is 7 months. It used to be longer. Well, Donald Trump didn't get 7 seconds. He didn't get a confirmation hearings. He got a witch hunt. And I mean, absolutely disgraceful witch hunt, where Democrats set out from the beginning to undermine his presidency. They declared their opposition to be a resistance. It's not the place of a party in a democracy, an opposition party, to mount a resistance. So resistance is what partisans do to Nazi occupations. It's to forget that we're all when you come down to it, we're all part of one community and have to live with each other, which is the basic American idea. When I say it's a witch hunt, I think of the treatment in particular, although this was fairly general throughout the hearings, of Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions is one of the half dozen most decent human beings in the United States Senate. And if you look at his career with any objectivity, I will wager these people think of themselves as liberals when they're actually bigots and unable to listen to somebody who has a different point of view. Jeff Sessions, and to leave before the facts come out, Jeff Sessions was the Attorney General in a deep South state, Alabama. It's where the civil rights movement really was born. He prosecuted the Ku Klux Klan. He sent one of its leaders to his death for a racial murder, and he desegregated the schools. By any objective standard, Jeff Sessions was a friend, if not a champion, of civil rights. And yet, beginning with Schumer well, it was all of them. And one after another, Democrats who had served in the Senate with him and knew very well who he was, called him a racist, which is basically drumming you out of decent society. And of course, Trump was absurdly called a white nationalist and anti-Semite. He actually was called an anti-Semite, and the chief evidence for that was an article that I had written for Breitbart. And because Steve Bannon was his strategist, that's how it linked on. It was Bannon who was called a white nationalist. And that was to tar Trump. It was an article that I wrote for Breitbart, which I gave the title to, which was, I said, Bill Kristol, Republican spoiler, renegade Jew. And people who didn't read the article, I mean, you know, Jews are always accused of divided loyalties and so forth. So that's the, but that wasn't what the article was about. The article was that once Trump was, I cut everybody's slack during the primaries. But once Trump is the nominee of the Republican Party, attacks on Trump doing what Bill Kristol was doing would bring back to the White House Ben Rhodes, Huma Abedin, the whole Obama team that has betrayed Israel and supported the Muslim Brotherhood and the Palestinian terrorists. So our country is in a kind of this is the second time the Democrats have seceded from the Union, is the way I look at it. We have this set of political ideas which bind us together. I guess this is really too tough for people. Huh? I'm used to this. I speak a lot on college campuses.
Well, you are Jewish.
Of course.
And I think when you were criticized for that headline, people did not realize.
It doesn't matter, because the article was very clear. It was that, for 8 years, Obama cut Israel off at the knees politically. I mean, he kept the arms because the Democratic Party is not prepared at this point in time to deny Israel military aid, but he legitimized their enemies and attacked. I mean, wanted them to go back to the 49 borders. It's unbelievable. There's been a 70-year war of aggression against the Jewish state because it's Jews, not because it doesn't occupy any Arab land. The land on which Israel was created belonged to the Turks, who are not Arabs, for 400 years previously. The Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan were all created the same way. It's a racist war, if you will. It's a genocidal, anti-Semitic war, which began with terrorist attacks in 1949 that Nasser, the Fedayeen, and has continued for 70 years. And you don't want to reward aggression with by giving them territories that's so close to, that puts Israel in such a small space that they cannot defend themselves. The Palestinian cause is a genocidal cause, and it's based on genocidal lies and genocidal intentions.
How important is moving the
So what
embassy?
Crystal did, I thought, was a betrayal of the Jews. It's that simple.
How important is moving the embassy to Jerusalem?
I think it's tremendously important. I think they need to cut off all the funds to the Palestinian Authority, and they need to close those, cut off UNRWA. The refugee camps are just breeding grounds for terrorists. There's no reason for there to be one Palestinian refugee. There were 600 or 700,000 Jews who were driven out of the Middle East. The Iraqi Jewish community was, I forget how many people, but it was huge in Iraq, and they'd been there for hundreds of years, and they were driven out, and Israel resettled them. And the Palestinians haven't been resettled for two reasons. One is that the other Arab countries won't let them in, and the other is that the Palestinian Authority wants them as cannon fodder. Terrorists, that's what they are. You know, it's a breeding ground for terrorists. So the United States should cut that off.
So considering the obstacles that...
And we should stop the peace process. It's idiotic. I mean, you can't have peace. You can't have peace with people who want to exterminate you. It's that simple. When they recognize Israel, when they stop the terrorist indoctrination, Jew hatred in their elementary schools. Anyway, I don't know how we got onto Israel. Let's move on to something else.
The question...
Yes.
The question regarding the president's opposition, how does he then craft a winning agenda, knowing how much opposition
Well, I think
there is?
he's doing it. I mean, look, what he's done in 100 days is little short of miraculous politically. He's cut illegal border crossings by 70%. That's going to save a lot of lives in this country from felons and terrorists that cross the borders, and it begins to restore American sovereignty. You can't have a country, as Trump has said, without borders. It's really simple, and anybody who thinks about it in a rational way will understand that immediately. It's not just that people behave badly. It's not just that you lose all control over who comes into your country. But, you know, we don't screen people for diseases. I mean, there's a measles epidemic. Are you that stupid to ask that question? Of course. When people came in through Ellis Island. Anyway, I don't want to argue with you.
Why don't we'll get to questions from the audience a little bit later in the show.
Come on. You can ask during a question time, but, you know, learn a little history. Every country has borders. Mexico has borders. There's strict borders, and there's reasons for it. And one of them is a health reason. So that's simple. Anyway, so what Trump has done is he's done what people would have considered miraculous a year ago, to cut the illegal crossings by 70%. He's brought hundreds of thousands of jobs into America. He just cut a trade deal with China, which is going to bring an enormous number of jobs. None of this is getting reported because the media is leftists. And today we have a complete fake news day. Trump shared intelligence with the Russians. Well, first of all, he's the chief executive, and therefore he has absolute authority to declassify anything he wants. And the only reason there's a story is because some people who violated class of the espionage laws leaked this information to the Washington Post, and the Washington Post is irresponsible enough, or rather, is geared up to destroy Trump. So all the news today, if you were watching your televisions, everything is about this non-story about Trump sharing intelligence with the Russians.
So with regards to some of the legislative accomplishments, how important is, for example, repealing and replacing Obamacare?
Well, legislative, there's an argument that could be made to just let it collapse. And Trump doesn't, look, Republicans all march to different drummers. It's a big problem. The Democrats it's like a communist party. They all, well, it is. I'll give you an example from the campaign. Trump is filmed without his knowledge in a bus with Billy Bush, and they're doing, some vulgar male boasting, which was itself distorted. If you only watch MSNBC, you don't know what's going on. So if you watched Fox, you may have understood that. You may have gotten the clip. It doesn't matter. Okay, so he did something stupid and apologized for it. Republican after Republican, Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney, this is a bridge too far. And Jeb Bush, to his everlasting shame, said, I have two precious granddaughters, and nothing Donald Trump says could make up for this or excuse this. That's the way Republicans react. Everybody marching off. Democrats, Hillary violated the espionage laws, shared our top secrets with our enemies, lied to the Congress, lied to the FBI, lied to the American people, lied to the parents. Look, I mean, you people better get used to it.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. David, I'm sorry if I can interrupt. If you do have questions for David, we are collecting them on index cards. We're going up and down, please. This is, for those of you who have been here before, this is regular practice. We really try hard to welcome all views, and we welcome all questions. So please, my colleagues are collecting them now. Thank you. Sorry, David.
Yeah. Behave. Lied to the parents of the fallen Benghazi heroes over their coffins. Not a single Democrat, not one, said this is a bridge too far, I can't support her. So that's why I call them, they act like a communist party, all in lockstep. Like, it's a, never mind.
They circle the wagons. They circle, even today you had Republicans criticizing the president over the Russia handling. So then, when you're trying to do a big agenda, David Horowitz, in your book here, how do you deal with Republicans who
Well, look,
are
I mean, there are two big news stories today that have gotten drowned by this fake news about the sharing of the intelligence. One is the fact that that 27-year-old DNC staffer who was murdered leaked 44,000 documents to WikiLeaks. So that blows up the Russia collusion thing, and it raises a question of who killed him. That story has been buried by this. The second story is that Trump is going off to the Middle East. He's going to Saudi Arabia, where he's got some of them to create some kind of center for moderate Islam. He's going to make an appeal to Muslims to oppose the terrorists and be aggressively moderate. He's going to meet with the Pope. He's going to the Western Wall, all three religions, and he's going to NATO. That was one of the early Democrat canards, lies about Trump, that he's an isolationist and he's going to walk away from NATO. I mean, there are so many lies that are coming out of the left and out of the Democrats. It's very difficult to advance your agendas, but I think he's doing a terrific job.
What is next for the agenda then?
Well, I think that he made very clear. I think that leftists are just brought up badly. I don't get it. He was very clear about his agenda. It's encapsulated in Make America Great Again, but make it prosperous, make us safe. The border crossings, stopping them, illegal border crossings, makes us safer. Sessions is out there backing up the police departments. We need law and order in our streets. There has been carnage in our inner cities, thanks to the support of the Obama administration and Black Lives Matter. Many black people have been slaughtered in the last years, spike in homicides because the police have backed off because they didn't get support from the DOJ. As I say, he's brought in hundreds of thousands of jobs. We have the biggest stock market boom from an incoming president in our history. I mean, what more do you want from this guy? And he's been obstructed both by the war that the Democrats have declared on him and by Republicans who march to different drummers all the time.
Well, you wrote the book. I'm just trying to understand the big agenda. You got 4 years, so what's the roadmap?
Well, I think that's a mouthful for 4 years, don't you?
All right, I guess we're done.
I want to say something about what's at the bottom of this. Why have the Democrats, why have they declared, this is the first time a president, not since the election of Abraham Lincoln, has an incoming president had a war declared on him, where you have Hollywood celebrities talking about blowing up the White House, where you have violent demonstrations all over the country, shutting down of conservatives. And we've seen a little of that attitude here today, that you just can't. This is a democracy. That means people are going to disagree, and we have a civilized way of disagreeing. And marching out before you've heard 5 words is not civilized. What's at the heart of this, what I call a civil war? It is that the Democratic Party is now a party which has adopted an ideology. If you go back to the first Civil War, there's a fundamental conflict between all men are created equal and slavery, obviously. That's why there was a war. Hopefully we're not going to come, I believe there's going to be a lot more violence because you can't stop the left. They have to run into a wall. And somebody is going to take them on, as happened in Berkeley. It's going to happen elsewhere. But we have what I would call an irreconcilable conflict, because the Democratic Party has departed from the fundamental American idea, which is that we don't judge people by their origins, by their skin color, by their ethnicity. This is what this country is about. This is what we have fought 250 years to complete, that we're going to judge everybody as individuals and hold them accountable as individuals. The Democratic Party is possessed now by an ideology which they call identity politics. Identity politics is you judge people by their skin color, by their ethnicity, by their gender, by their class position, provided they disagree with you. Amazing to me to hear all of these attacks on the 1%. Elizabeth Warren is a 1%er. She is worth $8.5 million. She lives in a $5 million mansion. By lying about her ethnic origins, she got a job at Harvard for $350,000 for one class. I mean, and then she attacks the corruption of the economic system. Look, you can just leave. If you don't shut up, we're going to just shut this meeting down, or you're going to be hauled out. Yeah, the agenda is to restore this country to what it has been for 250 years before the leftists came in with Obama and started to destroy it. It's very simple. That's the agenda. And I will get to that. I was going to conclude with it, but look, what was Trump's inaugural? Trump's inaugural was this. Trump's inaugural was this. It was to oppose the American idea of one nation, of one people, of e pluribus unum against the left's racism. Identity politics is racist. It privileges people on the basis of their skin color, their gender, or their class position. That's a racist ideology. You can see it in the term people of color, which is a racist term. If you think about people of color, and its root is cultural Marxism, and that's the way the left describes it. You read leftist tracts, identity politics is cultural Marxism. Marxism is this malicious idea that the world is all about oppression and oppressed. So anybody who succeeds, anybody who succeeds at the expense of somebody who fails. And anybody who has failed in their lives, made bad decisions, done things that are self-destructive, those people are guiltless. They're not responsible because they're oppressed. That's the leftist idea. That's why they hate Republicans. That's why they hate Jeff Sessions, decent human being that he is, because he doesn't subscribe to their identity hierarchies. If you think of the term people of color, think about Mexico. 2 ethnic groups, main groups. The descendants of the Spanish conquistadors, the oppressors, and the descendants of the survivors of the indigenous Indians whom they slaughtered and enslaved, the oppressed. But when these 2 groups come across the border, legally or illegally, all of a sudden they're people of color, therefore oppressed, therefore deserving certain sensibilities, certain sensitivities. We have to cut them slack and understand their misbehaviors if they misbehave. And they get special privileges as people of color. Maharajas in India are people of color. Beheaders and crucifiers, the Islamic beheaders in Raqqa and Iraq, those are people of color. Maharajas in India, those are people of color. Everybody in the world is people of color, therefore oppressed and deserving certain sensitivities, except the bad guys, the oppressors. Who's that? White people. This is a racist ideology. It has possessed the Democratic Party, and of course they're all hypocrites, so it doesn't matter to them that they're white. They just got a big, whatever it is, well, they see it as opportunity. Same thing with the 1%. What about George Soros? Are you a 1%er? Anyway, this is what the conflict we have now is about, and this is how Trump addressed it at the inauguration.
What does...
Wait, I'm going to quote from the inaugural, and then we can go on.
Sure.
And this is the big agenda. He said, if we are loyal to our country, we can learn to be loyal to each other. If you have patriotism in your heart, there will be no room for prejudice. We are black and brown and white, but we all bleed patriot red. That is the creed. That's the real agenda. It is to restore to America the idea we are a nation of individuals, not collectivities, not races, not genders, but individuals with individual rights, individual freedoms, and we are accountable for ourselves. There are no people in America who are oppressed except children who've chosen the wrong parents. But there are no people. Why would Haitians want to come here, risk their lives to be oppressed? No, because a Haitian in America, despite bigots here and there, a Haitian in America has more rights, more privileges, more opportunities than he does in Haiti, which has been run by black people for over 200 years. And it's not because they're black, it's because of the founding, it's because of everything in this, is this a square, Independence Square? All those documents created a political system where people treated as individuals and as equals before the law have unprecedented rights and opportunities. And that's what has to be restored in America. And that's what it means to make America great again. And also respected I should have mentioned that before. Well, look what Trump has done just militarily. America is now a power to be reckoned with, which it never was under Obama, because Obama's heart was with our enemies.
On that note, we have a question from the audience. What is the president going to do about the missiles in North Korea?
It's a good question. What did Obama do for 8 years, or Bush? The two of them. What Trump has done is, well, maybe you didn't notice, but, well, he's made a new opening with China, which is the only power that can rein in the North Koreans because their entire economy is dependent on their trade with China. China is their protector. So he's done, put it all on the front burner. You probably didn't notice that North Korea was there for 8 years under Obama, because Obama didn't really care about this country. If he cared about this country, he wouldn't have given a path to nuclear weapons to the Iranians who chant death to America. And he wouldn't have given them $200 billion, and he wouldn't have freed, I forget whether it's 6 or 14 Iranian agents who were in our prisons for working on illegally on their ballistic missile and nuclear programs. Sorry. I mean, it's really, when you have a country, which we now have, where you have half the population doesn't hear anything like this, and if they do, if they walk out before they actually hear it, you know, you're going to have this problem. And it has to be overcome. And I think that Trump, of all the Republicans, speaks to the American people in a very big way. He can reach out to ordinary Americans. Let me.
So is the answer then just with the help of China?
Well, he's going to have to put together a coalition of powers, which he's trying to do. He even tried to this jerk Duterte in the Philippines. He's making an effort. He's trying with the Russians. I mean, America, if America does it alone, it can't do it alone. It has to do it as a leader of a coalition. And that's what he's trying to put together.
What about with regards to...
While there's all this incoming fire, I mean, what the Washington Post and the New York Times, I hope he closes down those White House briefings, because those aren't reporters. They just hit people. They're gangsters is what they are.
Do you think that he'll propose an infrastructure package? Do you think Republicans will go along with it?
It's a big question, and there's no answer with this Republican Party. And Republicans don't like to spend money, do they? It's a problem. Look, there's a war on. And the way I see it is the people who understand that there's a war, which is every Democrat and every leftist, and people who don't understand that there's a war and think they can do things normally, which is unfortunately, most Republicans in Congress. Big problem. But if anybody can do what Trump can, he obviously has an iron constitution. In my talks, I've always referred to what I regard as a seminal moment in the debates, which is when Trump turned to the television cameras and addressed the 50 million people in the audience and said, "You have to understand, Hillary has tremendous hatred in her heart." Now, there's no other Republican. I'm going to tell you. Why can't you listen? Is it so hard? Is that so shocking to you that you can't wait? Will you shut up? Would somebody remove this woman? You're rude, you're talking out of turn, and you don't listen. And you don't listen. Just escort her out. So Hillary has tremendous hatred in her heart. And what was he referring to? He was referring to the basket of deplorables. Her comment that his supporters belong in the basket of deplorables and irredeemables, i.e. the damned. And she named them: racists, sexists, homophobes, Islamophobes, xenophobes. These are all terms to drum you out of humanity. It's because America is such an incredibly tolerant country, the most tolerant in the world, that racism, the accusation of racism has any sting at all. There isn't a conservative in this room, there wasn't a conservative in that audience who has been in an argument with a so-called liberal who has not been also been called a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, and Islamophobe. The Democratic Party, the party of the left, is a party of hate, and you see it every day, and we've witnessed it here. Cannot stand to be in a room with people who disagree with them on anything.
Are there any Democrats Trump should partner with to move his agenda forward?
He's got Joe Manchin, I guess. I mean, at this point, you have to understand the Democratic Party at this point. There are intelligent people, obviously, in the Democratic Party, many who understand that there's something very wrong with what Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are doing. But the money of the Democratic Party is in the hands of people like Soros and his billionaire club. There is no Republican Soros. There's no coalition. There is no Republican Soros. There is no coalition. Soros has put together a coalition of funders that provide $50 million, called the Democracy Alliance, $50 million a year to 501c3s. I've been running a conservative 501c3 now for almost 30 years. I can tell you there is no George Soros on the right. There are rich people, no question about it, but there's nobody who's organizing the war the way he is. No Democrat running for Congress can afford to be on the wrong side of Soros and his coalition. And that's what they're all terrified right now. Otherwise, there would be somebody who would be speaking up and saying, this is a bridge too far, but there are none.
How about Republicans like John McCain and others who seem to go after the president a lot of times?
What do you want me to say about McCain?
Well, what do you do about it?
Well, I think what Trump is trying to do is the right thing. He's trying to deliver on his agendas, on the specific agendas, as opposed to the big one. And the big one, but jobs, borders, restoring American respect in the world for American military power. All of this is hugely important. Stopping the border crossings, strengthening the police forces. I think that's the way he deals with people like McCain. I believe that a time will come in the next 2 years where his popularity will rise and where the Democrats will be beaten in the midterm elections. And then a lot of Republicans will come around, just the way they did during the campaign. They sabotaged him throughout the campaign, and he prevailed.
Is it a problem that he plans to visit Palestine and meet again with Abbas?
Well, I think I hope he isn't making this mistake for real. Abbas is a terrorist. He's just a terrorist and a Jew hater and obviously a very dishonest person. But Trump's negotiating positions are always you make a high demand and you reach out simultaneously. I hope he isn't being advised by people who think that there can be a peace process, because there can't.
This world tour.
And he may be playing for, there are Arab countries that unfortunately support the Palestinian Nazis. So maybe he's playing for them. Don't know.
Is it a good idea then for him to do this tour that he's doing?
I think it's a great idea. I think he's shown. I mean, what the Democrats say he's anti-Muslim. That's a colossal lie. He's reaching out to the Muslim world. He's forming coalition. He's going to, you know, I mean, I think he's got a big problem with the Saudis, but he's going to try. And he's doing it all in front of us, except nobody can see it because of all the fake news.
How does Trump push back and fight harder?
Just the way he's doing it. The big thing, I think the important factor is going to be the grassroots. When I came into the conservative movement 30 years ago, the first thing occurred to me as a former radical was, where's the ground force? Where's the army? Where are the student organizations? Not until the Tea Party was there really a grassroots political organization supporting conservatives. Obama has been the great teacher of the right. They see how dangerous the left is and how destructive towards this country. So it's the people who elected Trump. It's the grassroots. If they come out and if they understand that the country is as threatened as it is and that he really is all that's standing between us and disaster, he'll win.
Republicans now have 3 branches of government, the 2 houses of Congress, of course, and the White House. First time in a very long time. So what legislative achievements are people going to expect for midterms next year?
Well, I think you have, you know, when you say people, I think Trump supporters will understand that if he doesn't get the healthcare thing through, and if he doesn't get, which I think he will, and if he doesn't get the tax reform, which I also think he will, they'll understand why. It's because the Democrats have seceded from the Union and are at war with a duly elected president. And the media is not media anymore, just a chorus of the left. And they understand that Republicans are a big problem because they all march to different drummers, and they won't like the bottom line on the bill for the infrastructure or for the the tax reform. They'll feel it's too big a tax break. I don't know. So he's got, it's going to be interesting 2 years.
But in terms of midterm elections and Republicans keeping the House, I mean, it seems as if Democrats want to impeach him if they were to gain the majority again. So how do you?
Yeah, they want to impeach him before they get a majority. They want to impeach him from day one. They have this loon, Maxine Waters. I mean, how could the party not be totally embarrassed by this woman who pays her daughter $750,000 to do mailers for her campaign? I mean, this woman is corrupt. She's a racist, and she has served her community terribly. South Central, she's anti-law enforcement. She's a disaster. And it's idiocy on day one to say, impeach the president, which is what she has. That discredits it. I believe the American people have enough sense to see a party that's out of control, lost its mind, and reject it. So I'm confident we're going to win the midterm elections and 2020 also. Although there's always events in politics. It's when Harold Macmillan, the former Prime Minister of England, was interviewed after he retired. They asked him what was the most difficult thing for him, and he said, events. You don't know what's around the corner. So, all things being equal, Republicans are in a very good shape to win.
What is the plan to defeat ISIS?
Well, I think he's trying. I mean, one of the reasons I think the intelligence that he shared was about these computers that blow up planes to keep computers off international flights. And I think that he probably offered it to the Russians to try to, the Russians, don't forget, the Chechens are Islamic terrorists. all these Tajikistan, Turkestan, I don't know what, whatever, they're all Islamic states. So he's got a big problem with Islamic radicalism. And Trump is trying to get him to see the bigger picture, Putin. I mean, I hope he succeeds. He's going to try to put together a coalition. He already has. I mean, Saudi Arabia's, don't forget, the thing that's keeping us safe is the war between religious fanatics, the Sunnis and the Shia. These people have a 7th century mentality. They're fanatic and they hate each other and they hate Christians and they hate Jews and they hate, and on they hate. That's their religion. And Trump has reached out to these countries. Saudi Arabia being one of the most important, but Egypt. Obama supported the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the fountainhead of terror. Muslim Brotherhood spawned Al-Qaeda. It's the parent of Hamas. And Obama supported them openly. And that was, in part, in my view, because of Hillary's right hand, Huma Abedin, who was a Muslim Brotherhood operative. Ha ha ha! What is wrong with you people? Just unbelievable. You know nothing about Huma Abedin, I'm sure. You know what you read in the Daily News or the Philadelphia Inquirer. That's not Huma Abedin. Her parents, her mother. Huma Abedin worked for 12 years, for an organization whose chairman is an unindicted, oh, he's an indicted, he's wanted in connection with 9/11. He was the top 3 funders of Osama bin Laden. And she worked in the Institute for Muslim Minority Affairs, which was an institute dedicated, she was the editor, assistant editor of their magazine, dedicated to taking countries where Muslims are a minority, like America, and training the minority in radical Islamic terrorist concepts for when they become a majority. That's who Huma Abedin is. And that's where she worked for 12 years before going directly onto Hillary Clinton's staff. Lord. Doesn't really matter. Obama supported the Muslim Brotherhood, as did Hillary, in Egypt. That's how the Muslim Brotherhood got to power in those elections, because the United States fronted for them. Then when al-Sisi overthrew them, he cut off funds to al-Sisi and drove al-Sisi into the arms of Putin. That's what Obama did. And Trump is repairing that. And that's really important. It's the most important Middle Eastern country. It's 80 million people. And I can't, I'm not a big fan of their Islam. I think 80% of them are for killing apostates in Egypt. But they're on our side in this battle, and that is thanks to Trump. So right, that's what he's doing.
This is going to conclude our presentation. You're going to sign some books, I understand. So thank you all for coming tonight.